St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service takes great pleasure in bringing to you the second series of our Generations program, dubbed Children of Sugar. This series is not limited to persons whose parents worked directly in the sugar industry. Specifically, it has to do with individuals aged approximately 50 to 70 years who have strived to establish themselves as respectable persons within their communities, while overcoming their fair share of challenges. These individuals were motivated or even supported by persons connected directly or indirectly to the sugar industry, around which the Kittitian society continued to evolve. Feel free to let their stories tell the tale of the unconquerable Kittitian spirit and their family connections. Did you come from a big family?
Yes, I do.
Tell me how many brothers and sisters you had.
My mom have 12 children, 8 girls and 4 boys.
So now that must have been pretty interesting growing up then. Do you recall any hard time experiences, and how did your family, maybe your mother in particular, overcome those?
Yes, it was hard at times, but then she get it work. She tell us to be thankful with what she have. Sometimes she send us to a shop named Miss Paul to look 1 pound of chicken, and Miss Paul weigh the pound, and then she throw over, and we go home and she cook. Sometimes when she finish cooking, all I get in my food is the bum. And time to eat, all I eat with is the back and neck, the part of the back and neck, like the spoon, I eat with that part. Or if I catch the part first, soon to come off, I grab a spoon and hide it. That's how it was. But we was thankful and grateful to her. We was satisfied. She tell you plain, anyone I go to this yard, go beg anybody anything, don't come back. So we used to be thankful and satisfied. And we had to say the grace before meal and the grace after meal. Otherwise you don't get that food.
So what about things like going to school and so on? In those days, did you all have to wear uniform, or you went as you were?
We used to wear our own clothes, but she used to make my dress with a band, one dress with a collar, one dress with no sleeve, the other dress with a sleeve, just to identify them, because we used to have a lot of clothes look alike. And when you come home at afternoon, you have to take off your school panty because it's the only one, wash it, and you get it dried for in the morning. Sometimes when morning get a mine waist cold, I can't overwing it, but I put it on because I had to go with one on. When you come back, they had your chore to do around the house, and before you even take up your bowl or your plate, you have to do what she said do. And if she go to work, leave it to do something, and she come back and here and finish. As we reach in the yard, good afternoon, ma. Remember where you leave and done. And she don't talk. We used to go 5 Sunday schools every Sunday, 4 churches. One of them used to only have Sunday schools at the time when we reached there, for churches to be already over. Otherwise, we will have got to 5 churches.
Do you recall anything about your father?
No, I didn't know him because he went to England. When the boat them was taking people so much a days on the water, he went to England. And then I dig and choke and ask and everything until I get correspond with him. And then he used to notice me. And then he come out to St. Kitts for a while, and he was going to Bill, and then he died. He died here in St. Kitts. But I was getting things from him now and between. He had a bank there. What was his name?
You mean Bank of Commerce?
Bank of Commerce was there, and there he used to send my money monthly, and he helped me with my building of my house and everything.
I think large is relative. I notice I'm saying had, because in the course of life, I've lost 2 of my brothers, one who was before me and one, my youngest brother. Walker died this past year, and now I have 1 brother in England, 1 sister in Tortola, 1 sister in St. Kitts, and myself. So that is technically large. There were about 7 of us. One of my brothers died in infancy. So I guess in the scheme of Caribbean families, that could be considered large. Although I growing up in Sandy Point, I heard of some 10s and knew of some 10s and others. So
exactly.
Yes.
So were there any challenges then for your mother in terms of having to feed many mouths?
Well, I think in my context, which I know from a sociological point of view, is the context of many of our persons in the Caribbean. It is said that about 70% of us in the Caribbean are born in families where the mother is the father. My mother was my father. I only got to know my father when I was about 11 years old. And at that time, when he met me, he started to boast about this son of his, but I didn't know him until then. So my mother was my father. It reminded me of the book by Edith Clarke, the Jamaican sociologist, who said, my mother fathered me, my mother fathered me. My mother came from a family of 14 in Nevis. So, I mean, for having 7, that was not a problem, you know. I mean, she was a hard taskmaster. I mean, she herself did not finish 7th standard, but you couldn't fool her at all, and she encouraged us to work. And if you've ever lived in Sandy Point or were born in Sandy Point, you know, it is a very competitive environment, but there are always people in the environment who could be seen as role models, and those were the kinds of challenges I saw. So they weren't really challenges in the context of not achieving some things or being able to get some things, but really challenges to see if you can be at the level or surpass others.
Can you recall any experiences in terms of maybe your siblings or even how your mother was able to make the dollar stretch?
Well, my mother was very, very creative. She worked at Brooks Estate in Sandy Point, and at the same time we leased land from Brooks Estate, which meant that before the crack of dawn, as we used to say, I had to be up in the mountain working that ground. But it was planting potatoes, yams, cassava, yashin, edos. We had to be up there. And certainly I had to be out of that field, get the water from the pipe outside because there was no running water in the house, bathe our skin because there was no shower, and then dash to school and be on time. Because if you weren't on time, some of the person who I guess I would talk about my teachers, it was blows in your tail. The licks had some kind of effect. You know, I mean, others may disagree with me, but in my instance, I felt it kept me in line. Sometimes verbal abuse is worse than physical abuse, you know, so I think we have to be very mindful and find a very strategic way to work with our youngsters.
I came from a large family. I think there were 12 of us, 7 girls and 5 boys. The children were grouped. You had the older ones, you had the middle ones, and the younger ones, so to speak. Yeah, there were challenges, but I think we overcame it by rearing our own animals, growing our own food crops, etc. When money would be scarce, like around Easter, probably Christmas time, we would butcher one of the animals we raised, and that supplemented the family income quite a lot.
Describe your mother and your father.
Well, my parents were both working class people. My mother ensured that we had a hot meal, so she stayed at home. But in the crop season, she would go early in the morning and do some weeding and be back in time to have our lunch when we returned from school. My father was what you call a jack of all trades. He was a very hard-working man. We lived on the estate, and as such, he did probably everything that could be done on an estate. He drove the car, he was a mechanic, he looked after animals, you know, he drove the tractor when it was necessary. I think because we lived on the estate, he was more or less called upon more than is usual.
Did any of the children have to do any of those type of chores before going to school?
Yes, one of the brothers was assigned to the animals. He would look after the cow. Well, of course, we didn't take the cow to pasture. There was always provision for the cows on the estate and some sheep. You could raise them near to your house. There were pigs, which, you know, you fed them on the scraps from their house, etc. But one of my brothers was involved in the raising of the animals.
I was taken from my mother when I was 3 months old.
Okay.
So that I grew with my grandfather and my grandmother, who was like my mother. I grew up in Prickly Pear Alley, having been born in an alley just north of Prickly Pear Alley. So that I am really a son of Prickly Pear Alley.
Okay. All right. And growing up with your grandparents, do you recall any hard time experiences that you can share with us?
Well, I only knew there were hard times on reflection. In looking back, things must have been hard. And I said that because by comparison, everybody around us was at least at the same level of poverty. But my grandfather, who had a trade, was a tradesman, a cooper it was called, making tubs and so on that people wash clothes in. He fared a little better than people who were around, and so everybody called him Papa Franks. We had a 2-bedroom house where my grandfather and grandmother shared one room, and then my father, who was outside, had what you call a screen put across his room, and then my grandmother's niece Agnes had another area of the front room, as they call it, and then I grew up with my grandmother's smaller niece, Josephine. So Josephine and myself grew up like brothers and sisters in that. So there was about 5 of us growing up in the little room. And let me tell you, because for example, for breakfast I had to go to buy bread, and I would buy what you call 2 pence bread. It was a halfpenny for each bread.
Wow.
So you got 4 bread, and you bought an ounce of cheese to go with that. Of course, the tea was some form of bush tea. But when you had 4 bread to divide between all of us over there and so on, you understand that what the simplicity with which we enjoy the morning meal and so on. You know, you look in the fowl coop to see if there are any eggs were laid. Now, these eggs were not for consumption by us, especially now and then. The eggs were for sale. And then my grandmother, as I called her, used to sell what you call a sell tray. So she would have pear, the avocados, under the house ripening, because there was no woman inside the house. So that was something that took place outside. Right. So I had to go and feel the pears to see which were ripe, and to bring out to put in the tray with the eggs. And she sold wood. She would go down on the bayfront, what you call the Nevis Market, and you'd buy a bunch of kosher wood that you cut up in small pieces and sell it by the bundles. And then my grandfather, who was a cooper, the bits and pieces from the center of the tub he was making, you'll cut that up because he had wax, and people like to buy that to start the fires. And it came out and sweep up the yard, and you had to go outside on what you call a dresser, which was a makeup table in the yard, to wash up the dirty things. Okay. You know, and having done that, you know how to head water. So you go to the top of the road where they have a bath now, where you collected your water and you boiled down. You had to fill the bath pan for washing and fill other containers for use during the day. So those were things you had to do before you took your bath in the bath, the same public bath, and got ready to go to school.
I came from a very large family. There are 8 of us, 4 boys and 4 girls. It was not really hard times, but it was a time that she set her life in order. She was a farmer, and as far as I could remember, there were 3 of us after my eldest sister was migrated to England. And the second daughter left home as well, went on her own, but Lucina and myself, we stuck together as twins. And there is where we used to go and help a farm before we go to school. There were other little things that we had to do when the farming is over. And it wasn't like now that you have to tell the children, do this or do that. We know what we had to do, and we do it. Like cleaning the yard, look the hog meat for the pig, take out the goat, and things like that. It was a way of life. And believe me, we worked hard, but she used to treat us well in that respect. She was a very disciplined woman. We had to go to school every day. Don't make a mistake and tell her that we are not feeling well. Church every Sunday. Sunday school, and let me tell you, the Sunday school, all kinds of we had to go. We began Methodist at 11, and then Sunday school at 2 or 2:30, and then from there we go to Bethany, from Bethany to Pilgrim Holiness, And even those sideway lines near to our home, we had to go in there and be in time to get the goat in before 6 o'clock.
Right, so you were busy on Sunday in particular.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about your father then.
My father, he is an vision. He was a fisherman. I could remember vaguely though. I was called from out of junior. Ita Mills was my teacher and said, there is a man come to me. He said, he's my father. And I felt very good and I ran towards this man and he hugged me and he kissed me and he told me that I am your father and I'll believe in you. I'm going away to St. Croix. And he gave me a shilling. And I took it home and I gave it to my mother, but I didn't hear or see him again until I went to St. Croix to see him on his sick bed.
Next week, we feature early education. Give us your feedback on tonight's Generations program and feel free to make comparisons with our first series, Back Then. You can email us at sknisgenerations@gmail.com. Overcoming life's challenges, demonstrating the unconquerable Kittitian spirit.